My stepmother yelled, "Get out of my house." My father said nothing, and my aunt gave me a place to stay. Years later, when I made it big, they returned asking for money. What I did next made them lose their minds. That's the sentence that shaped my entire life. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. My name is Sophia, and if someone had told 16-year-old me that the people who once threw me away would one day come crawling back, I wouldn't have believed it. I was too broken back then to imagine a future where I stood tall, let alone one where I had something they wanted. But let me take you back to the night everything changed, because revenge isn't born in a single moment. It grows from years of hurt, years of silence, and years of pretending you don't notice the people who are supposed to love you slowly turning into strangers. My stepmother, Lydia, came into my life when I was 12. Before she arrived, it was just me and my dad. He wasn't warm, he wasn't expressive, but he tried, at least I thought he did. But Lydia? She didn't try at all. She walked into our house like it already belonged to her, like every wall, every shelf, every memory of my mother was something she could erase and replace. I never hated her at first. I just didn't understand why she disliked me so immediately. She'd sigh when I entered the room, criticize how I looked, complain that I was too emotional, too sensitive, or too much work. The funny thing is, kids always think adults know something they don't. So for a long time, I believed her. I believed I was the problem. But the woman I could have learned to tolerate eventually became the woman who shattered my world. It started with small things. A sweater going missing. A school form forgotten. A plate I didn't break somehow becoming my fault. And every time she complained, my father nodded, not in agreement, not in understanding, but in surrender. He didn't want conflict with her. So he let her create conflict with me. I could have handled the insults, the comparisons, the coldness. But nothing prepared me for the night she barged into my room holding one of her necklaces, a necklace I had never seen before, accusing me of stealing it. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" she snapped, waving the jewelry like evidence in a courtroom. "You think you can take my things and get away with it?" I stood up, heart pounding. "What? I didn't touch that. Why would I steal anything from you?" Lydia's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed. "This is my house, my rules, and I am done with you." Then she screamed it, the sentence that still rings in my ears. "Get out of my house." And then, the silence. The silence that broke me more than her words ever could. I looked at my father who should have defended me, or at the very least questioned her, and he stood there frozen. His hands limp at his sides, eyes empty. Not a single word came out of his mouth. Not one. Not even my name. I realized in that moment that I was alone. Truly alone. So I grabbed my backpack, stuffed it with whatever I could reach, and walked out the front door. Lydia slammed it behind me, like sealing a chapter shut. It was dark, cold, and terrifying. 16-year-old me could barely think. I stood on the sidewalk crying, not because I got kicked out, but because the man who was supposed to love me didn't love me enough to stop it. There was only one place I could go. Aunt Carla. My mother's older sister. The only person who ever looked at me with the same warmth my mother once had. When she opened her door and saw my face, she didn't hesitate. She didn't interrogate me. She didn't judge me. She just wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're staying with me." That night, for the first time in years, I fell asleep without fear of who would yell at me in the morning. Living with Aunt Carla wasn't glamorous. We shared a small space, money was tight, and she worked long hours. But emotionally, it was the richest home I'd ever lived in. She pushed me to study, to dream, to fight for myself. She reminded me that I mattered. "I can't replace your mother," she told me once, "but I'll never let you feel unwanted again." And she kept that promise. Through long nights of homework, endless part-time jobs, and a growing determination to build a life better than the one I left behind, I found myself changing. I wasn't the scared girl on the sidewalk anymore. I was becoming someone strong. Someone capable. Someone worthy. 10 years later, when I finally made it big, when the business I built from scratch exploded into success, I didn't celebrate alone. I bought Aunt Carla a home, paid off her debts, gave her the comfort she had given me. Everything felt perfect. Until suddenly, the ghosts of my past reappeared. My father and Lydia, standing at my office door, smiling like they had never thrown me away. But they weren't there for love, or apology, or closure. They came for money. And what happened next? What I did next? When I first saw them, my father and Lydia, standing in the lobby of my office, I froze. It felt like the universe had suddenly dragged an old wound into the light. They looked older, thinner, and strangely nervous. Almost like they knew they didn't belong there. My receptionist whispered, "They said they're your parents. Should I send them away?" A part of me wanted to say yes. A big part of me wanted to say yes. But another part, the version of myself that had survived them, outgrown them, and built a life in spite of them, wanted to hear what they had to say. So I gave a small nod. Send them in. As they walked into my office, they scanned the place with wide eyes. Glass walls. Awards on shelves. A skyline view that looked like success itself had a front row seat. Their expressions were a mix of shock and desperation. My father spoke first, quietly, cautiously. "Sophia, you've done well for yourself." It was the first time I had heard his voice in years. And honestly, it felt like hearing a stranger speak. Lydia gave a forced smile, the same smile she used to give neighbors whenever she wanted to pretend she was a good person. "You look different, dear. More mature. Dear." She had never once called me dear in her life. I leaned back in my chair. "Why are you here?" They exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations couples have when they're about to say something rehearsed. My father cleared his throat. "We've been having financial difficulties, and we were hoping." Lydia cut in. "Well, hoping you could help us out. Just for a little while." There it was. The truth stripped of disguise. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at them, these two people who once stood on a porch and watched me cry as I walked into the darkness, now standing in front of me asking for help. "What kind of help?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Lydia shifted uncomfortably. "We need money. A loan. The bank turned us down and we thought, since you've been so successful." My father forced a nod. "We thought maybe you could support your family." Family. The word almost made me laugh. I took a slow breath. "Do you remember the night you kicked me out?" My father flinched, just slightly. Lydia rolled her eyes. "Sophia, that was years ago. You were being disrespectful and difficult. You can't keep holding on to childish drama." Childish drama. My heart tightened, but not from pain. From clarity. They hadn't changed. Not even a little. I leaned forward. "You accused me of stealing something I didn't take. You grabbed me, screamed at me, and threw me out. And Dad, you didn't defend me. Not once." My father looked down. "I made mistakes," he murmured. "No," I said firmly. "You made a choice." The room went silent. For years, I used to imagine what it would feel like to confront them. I thought it would be emotional or messy. But standing there now, in the life I built without them, all I felt was distance. Like we were three people in a room, strangers sharing a story with no connection left. Finally, Lydia crossed her arms. "All right, fine. You're hurt. We get it. But we're asking for your help now. You have more than enough, and we're your parents." My parents. Those words didn't belong to them. I stood up slowly and walked toward the window. The city stretched out beneath me, a reminder of everything I had earned through sweat, fear, and determination. Everything they never believed I could achieve. I turned back to them. "Where were you when I needed parents?" Neither of them answered. The days that followed were strange. They began calling, texting, leaving messages like, "We're family. You should help us. You've changed. You can't abandon us when we're struggling. You owe us." Owe them? For what? For the trauma? For the nights I cried myself to sleep? For the years I worked until my bones ached just to build the life they predicted I'd never have? Aunt Carla noticed the tension immediately. "Sweetheart," she said one evening while cooking dinner, "you don't owe those people a penny. Don't let guilt buy your peace." I nodded, but something inside me wasn't settled. It wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was closure. Not the kind where you slam a door and walk away. The kind where you walk through the door you built yourself, knowing you'll never be trapped again. I needed them to understand something, not with yelling, not with spite, but with a truth so sharp it cut clean. But more importantly, I needed to protect the life I built with the woman who actually saved me. So, I came up with a plan. Not a cruel plan. Not an over-the-top revenge fantasy. A realistic one. A fair one. One that would show them exactly what they taught me. And what happened next would push them over the edge. My plan began with something simple, a conversation. A controlled one. A conversation where I set the rules. Because for the first time in my entire life, I had the power they used to hold over me. So, I invited them to meet me at a quiet cafe downtown. Neutral territory. Public enough to keep Lydia from exploding, private enough that I could say what needed to be said. They arrived dressed like they wanted to appear respectable. My father in a button-down shirt he hadn't ironed properly, Lydia in a blazer too expensive for someone claiming to be broke. They sat down across from me, and the desperation in their eyes was louder than any words they could have rehearsed. "Thank you for meeting us," my father began softly. I nodded. "Let's talk about what you're asking." Lydia leaned forward immediately, like she'd been waiting for the doorway to jump through. "We need a loan to save our house. Just a temporary setback. With your income, it's probably nothing to you." I kept my voice calm. "How much?" Her eyes flickered, hopeful. $50,000. $50,000. The number hit me like a gust of cold wind. Not because I didn't have it, but because they asked for it so easily. Like it was loose change. Like I owed them that kind of security after they had ripped mine away. My father added quietly, "We'll pay it back when we can." We both knew they never would. I folded my hands. "Before I say anything, I want to understand something. Why come to me now? After all these years?" My father sighed, shoulders sagging. "We made mistakes. We weren't perfect parents." "You weren't parents at all," I corrected gently, but firmly. Lydia's jaw tightened. "This again? You're still stuck on the past? Sophia, you're an adult now. You're successful. Why can't you just move forward? Why do you have to hang on to old drama?" Old drama. That phrase again. I stared at her. "You threw a 16-year-old girl out of her home. That's not drama. That's abandonment." She scoffed. "Well, you turned out fine, didn't you?" I felt something inside me harden. Not anger, just certainty. That's when I pulled out a small envelope and placed it on the table. They both stared at it, and I could see greed flash in Lydia's eyes. "What's this?" she asked quickly. "Something I want you to read," I replied. Lydia opened it first. It wasn't a check. It wasn't money at all. It was a letter. A calmly written, painfully honest letter describing exactly what their actions had done to me, not in a dramatic way, but in a factual, clear, undeniable way. Every night I cried myself to sleep. Every day I felt unwanted. Every holiday I spent feeling invisible. Every milestone I reached with no father there to celebrate. Lydia's face twisted. "What is this supposed to be? A guilt trip?" "No," I said. "It's clarity. For me and for you." My father's eyes moved slowly across the page. When he finished, he swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "Sophia, I didn't know you felt this way." My chest tightened. "You did know. You just chose not to see it." Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Lydia tried again, her voice turning sharp. "So what? You wrote us a sad letter. Are you going to help us or not?" I took a slow breath. And then I delivered the part of my plan that neither of them expected. "I will help you, but not with money." Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me. If you need groceries, I'll buy them. If you need essentials, I'll provide them. If you need help finding work, I'll connect you with someone. But I'm not giving you money." Lydia's voice exploded. "This is ridiculous. We didn't come here for charity. We need cash. We need real help." I stood up. "You're getting real help. Just not the kind you can manipulate." My father reached out weakly. "Sophia, please, we're losing everything." I paused. Looked at the man who watched me lose everything at 16. And then looked at the woman who took pleasure in making me feel like a burden. You taught me something, I said softly. You taught me that people who abandon you once will do it again when it's convenient. I won't fund that cycle. Lydia slapped her hand on the table. So you're punishing us? No, I replied calmly. I'm protecting myself. Her face reddened with fury. You ungrateful child, after everything we've been through. I stepped back. You haven't been through anything. I have. And I survived without you. So no, I'm not giving you money. She shot to her feet. You'll regret this. I held her gaze. No, Lydia. For the first time, I won't. That meeting changed everything. Because after that day, they became obsessed. The calls turned into voicemails. The voicemails turned into angry messages. The angry messages turned into accusations. You're heartless. You owe us. You're selfish. You'll burn all your luck treating your parents this way. At first, it stung. But then, it empowered me. They were losing control. And when people lose control of someone they used to manipulate, they lose their minds. But I hadn't even executed the real part of my plan yet. The part that would expose the truth. The part that would make them face everything they ran from. The part that would finally end this cycle. The moment I realized they were never going to stop was the moment everything changed. The calls. The messages. The guilt trips. The sudden attacks pretending to be emotional pleas. It all blended into this endless cycle of desperation and manipulation. And that's when I knew. They weren't just asking for money, they were demanding control again. The same kind they used to have when I was 16. This time, I wasn't going to give it to them. So I set the final part of my plan into motion. I asked them to meet me one last time. Not at my office. Not at a cafe. But at Aunt Carla's house, the place where my life had been rebuilt from scratch. The one place they couldn't twist the narrative. When I told Aunt Carla what I planned, she put a hand on my shoulder. You don't need to prove anything to them, sweetheart. I know, I said. But this isn't for them. It's for me. She nodded with a proud, quiet smile. Then I'll be right here. That afternoon, I sat at the old wooden dining table, the same table where she had helped me with homework, fed me soup when I was sick, and comforted me during the nights I doubted myself the most. This table represented stability. Love. The opposite of everything my father and Lydia had given me. When they arrived, they hesitated at the doorway. It was almost poetic, how they once forced me out of a home, and now couldn't walk into one they weren't welcome in. Aunt Carla opened the door for them. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes said everything. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. Hello, Carla. She stepped aside silently, letting them in. They took seats across from me, their faces tense, waiting for me to say something. I started calmly. Before anything else, I need to make one thing clear. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to revisit old memories. I'm here to end something that should have ended years ago. Lydia crossed her arms. If you're not giving us money, you should have just said that. I leveled my gaze at her. I did say that. Repeatedly. She scoffed, muttering under her breath, ungrateful. I ignored her. Instead, I pulled out another envelope, this time a thicker one, and placed it on the table. What is this now? She asked, irritated. It's the truth, I said. Inside were documents. Bankruptcy records. Unpaid loan notices. Credit card statements. Even a foreclosure warning. And then photos. Photos that I had quietly collected through a private investigator I hired after they began harassing me. Photos of Lydia at casinos. Photos of her shopping beyond her means. Photos of her dining at upscale restaurants. Photos of her spending money they didn't have. My father stared at them, stunned. Lydia, what is this? She froze. Her face went pale, then flushed red, then pale again. I continued, my tone calm but steady. These documents show your current financial situation. And these photos show exactly where the money went. You're not here because you're struggling. You're here because you've been irresponsible for years. My father looked at her in disbelief. You told me we were drowning because of medical bills. She glared at me. You hired someone to spy on me? Yes, I said simply. After you started harassing me, I wanted to know the truth. My father sank into his chair, head in his hands. I can't believe this. But Lydia wasn't done. Not her. She leaned forward, voice rising. So what? You think this changes anything? We still need money. I shook my head. No. You need money. And Dad doesn't even know what's going on. He lifted his head slowly. Sophia, what do you want me to say? I met his eyes that had once watched me walk away without a word. I want you to understand what you chose, I said softly. You chose her. Every single time. Even when it hurt me. Even when it cost me everything. He swallowed hard. I thought she was telling the truth. I thought you were acting out. And you never once asked why, I replied. That's what hurt the most. Lydia slammed her fist on the table. Enough of this emotional garbage. She's rich. She can help us. Aunt Carla stepped in then, calm, composed, and devastatingly firm. Money isn't the problem here, Lydia. Character is. And you don't get to come into my home and disrespect my niece after what you put her through. Lydia stood up so fast her chair screeched backwards. This is insane. We came here for help and you're all attacking me. I stood up too. We're not attacking you. We're telling the truth. Something you've avoided your whole life. My father whispered, Sophia, we really are losing the house. I nodded. And I'll help you. But not with cash. I will pay for a financial advisor. I will set up a budget plan. I will help you find resources. But that's it. Lydia's face twisted. That's humiliation. No, I corrected. That's accountability. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You're doing this out of spite. You love watching us suffer. I looked her dead in the eyes. You kicked me out at 16. I survived without you. Everything I am, everything I have, I built with no help from either of you. The only person who stood by me is the woman standing behind me right now. I will not reward cruelty. I will not enable irresponsibility. And I will not be manipulated ever again. Lydia screamed. You're heartless. I didn't flinch. No. I'm healed. And healing looks like boundaries. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard it rattled. My father stayed frozen in his chair. I'm so sorry, Sophia, he whispered. Sorry isn't enough, I said quietly. But it's a start. And for the first time, I saw real regret in his eyes. My father stayed seated long after Lydia stormed out. The silence in the room felt heavy, like the weight of decades finally settling in one place. He rubbed his hands together nervously, a habit I remembered from childhood. I didn't know she was lying, he whispered. I nodded slowly. I believe you didn't know. But you also didn't ask. You didn't want to see the truth because it was easier to believe her. He swallowed hard. You're right. Aunt Carla stepped forward then, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You have a chance to make things right, but only if you take responsibility too. He nodded without looking up. For the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel anger toward him. Just relief. Relief that the truth was finally out. Relief that I wasn't carrying the blame for his choices anymore. I pushed a document folder toward him. These are the resources I promised. A financial advisor, budget plans, and community assistance programs. I'll pay for the advisor for the first 6 months. After that, it's on you. He stared at the folder for a moment before taking it with both hands. Thank you, he whispered. I gave a small smile. This isn't charity. It's closure. He nodded again, this time with a little more strength in his expression. Then he looked up at me with eyes that were tired and honest. Sophia, I hope someday you can forgive me. I took a slow breath. I'm not ready yet. But at least now I see you're trying. That means something. He gave a sad, grateful smile. Before leaving, he hesitated at the door, glancing back at Aunt Carla. You took care of her when I didn't, he said. Thank you. Aunt Carla offered a warm but firm smile. Always. When he finally left, the house felt peaceful again. Aunt Carla turned to me with soft eyes. You handled that beautifully. I exhaled deeply. I was shaking the whole time. She laughed gently. And yet you stood your ground. I dropped into a chair, exhausted emotionally, but somehow lighter. Do you think he'll actually change? I asked. She sat beside me. He might. He might not. But what matters is you changed. You faced your past without letting it define your future. I nodded, letting her words settle in my chest. For years, I had carried this silent ache, the ache of being abandoned by the one person I should have been able to rely on. But now, it felt like I had finally put that weight down. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No messages. No sudden demands. For the first time in forever, the quiet felt peaceful instead of tense. One morning, I was getting ready for work when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my father. "I'm attending budgeting classes. Thank you for giving me a chance to rebuild." Just one line. Simple, but meaningful. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I stared at the screen for a moment, letting the reality sink in. He was actually trying. Later that night, I finally texted back. "I'm glad you're taking responsibility. Keep going." Nothing emotional. Nothing dramatic. Just encouragement with boundaries. And it felt right. Meanwhile, Lydia. Well, she did what she always did, blamed everyone but herself. I heard from a neighbor that she'd moved back in with her sister temporarily. Apparently, she was still telling everyone I humiliated her. But the difference was, I didn't care anymore. Her opinion no longer had power. Her words no longer mattered. Her presence no longer threatened my peace. Aunt Carla noticed the change in me instantly. "You look lighter these days," she said one evening as we shared tea. "I feel lighter," I admitted. "It's like I finally closed a chapter I've been stuck in for years." She smiled. "You wrote your own ending, sweetheart. That's why it feels so good." And she was right. 3 months later, I invited my father to a small family dinner at Aunt Carla's house. Just him. Not Lydia. He showed up early, dressed neatly, holding flowers for Aunt Carla and a small book for me. A self-help book titled Healing After Family Betrayal. "I've been reading it," he said awkwardly. "It helped me understand things about myself, and about what I did to you." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. But his sincerity was unmistakable. "Thank you," I whispered. Dinner was quiet but comfortable. There were awkward pauses, but they weren't painful, just new. Like we were learning each other again. When he left that night, he hugged me gently. Not tight, not desperate, just present. And that's when I knew. Maybe forgiveness wasn't impossible. Maybe it would come gradually, on its own time. And I wasn't rushing it. Because for the first time in my life, I had control over my peace. I wasn't the scared 16-year-old anymore. I wasn't the discarded daughter. I wasn't the girl begging for love from people incapable of giving it. I was a woman who built her own future, who set boundaries, who stood up for herself even when her voice trembled. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was simply this. I healed. I moved on. And I didn't let them break me again. And in the end, that was the deepest revenge of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And make sure you subscribe to Revenge Files for more real-life revenge stories every day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.